Great, great. And I think, okay, perfect. I think I'll give it to you, Melissa, then. All for you. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for the intro. I wanted to keep today pretty informal, so if at any time you have any questions, feel free to interrupt. But like Kiara said, I joined RCSI last autumn, in August, and I'm a postdoc in the Department of General Practice. I work primarily on evidence synthesis, national clinical guideline development, and science communication, and I do some collaborative work with HICWA on some COVID stuff. I am an epidemiologist by background, and I also have a background in psychology. I've been interested in science communication for a while, but I really didn't get into sort of Twitter stuff until I was essentially kind of forced to as my PhD project. So I really came into it a little bit reluctantly at first. I really had no idea what I was doing, and I made some mistakes along the way. So hopefully at the end of this, you might have a better idea of maybe how you want to use Twitter for your work, and hopefully you won't make some of the mistakes that I made, and you will have some success going forward. So first off, a full disclaimer, I'm not a Twitter expert. I don't have tens of thousands of followers, nor do I want them. I don't want to be an influencer or anything like that. I don't want to be a talking head, and that's my decision. That's what I choose to do for my communication of science and how I want to interact with it. If you want to, have TikTok videos and post them on Twitter, there are a lot of very popular accounts. There's like a famous ophthalmologist that I follow who makes jokes, and I mean they're educational jokes about medicine and the state of healthcare and things like that. There's another one that comments on statistics. So just decide on what you feel most comfortable with. But that's sort of the lens that I'm coming at it from. I was kind of forced into this, but I really embraced it. I really enjoyed it, and I really get a lot from it. But I'm not an expert by any means, so take what I have to say with a grain of salt. And also, I'm not speaking in any capacity whatsoever related to RCSI. I'm not going to talk about branding things or official like press communication type stuff. That stuff is a whole nother realm. So on the bottom of this slide is both my personal handle and the Postdoc Society's Twitter handles as well. So feel free to follow either of those. So definitely follow the Postdoc one. Also, if you're not on the Postdoc Society mailing list, please get on that so you can be aware of our upcoming events and things like that. And if you ever have any questions going forward, you're also welcome to contact me by email as well. So today, to give you sort of an overview of what I'll cover, so starting off with sort of the why you should set up a Twitter account as an early career researcher, because there might be some resistance to this initially. You might have just been told to do it and not really be keen on it. So once you sort of, hopefully I will somewhat convince you to set one up if you don't already have one. I will walk you through sort of how to do that, and some sort of tips and tricks of how to get started, sort of some common mistakes that you see here and there, and also ending with sort of my personal experience with it, some of the professional benefits that I've had over the years with using it. So starting off with the sort of why you should set up a Twitter account as an early career researcher. So a lot of funders are really keen on sort of having you communicate your work in different ways outside of just a typical scientific article, which is a really good initiative and push. But you also want to make sure that it's sort of not a tick box exercise. So it can be really valuable to practice your communication in a different way. You're talking to a different audience, but you also don't want to sort of do this in a tokenistic way. You don't want to do it just to fulfill the funders. You want to do it because you're actually gaining some benefit from it. So first, primarily, you probably think, okay, that's what I can do it for. But funders, they want to see that I'm making an effort to do it in a different way. So that can be, your initial approach to things, your initial incentive, but there are other benefits that you can get from it as well. So, you might be publishing articles, but a lot of us, that doesn't happen that often. It's more about your day-to-day work, especially if people are working from home. Maybe you don't have the colleagues next to you to ask these, research-related day-to-day questions to. And Twitter is a very helpful place for that. So, I use R and SAS, statistical softwares in my work. So there are different hashtags for that in different communities that I can ask questions for. I'm also an epidemiologist, so we all hang out at #EpiTwitter. Even in the beginning of the pandemic, we had charity fundraising T-shirts that have #EpiTwitter on it. All the medical librarians hang out at #MedLibs. So if you have any questions about evidence synthesis or search strategies, things like that. So it can be very helpful to get those sort of day-to-day questions from colleagues in your field. In addition to sort of the research support side of things, it can be very valuable for social support as well, because I think a lot of PhD students and postdocs have quite unique situations. Talking from my personal experience, I have moved a lot. You adapt to new workplaces, new cultures. So it is a lot of change, new universities. So it's very interesting and helpful to sort of connect with people globally, really, that are in similar situations, that they can share their experiences, and you can get support from people who are in a similar situation. Lastly, it can also be very helpful for networking, for virtual conferences in particular. So I actually used it for when in-person conferences existed. But with virtual ones, it's a lot more common that they have hashtags and accounts, and they encourage it more to have more interaction. But they do have them for in-person conferences as well. So essentially, it's another way to connect with people who are attending the same thing as you. You can also, if you're there in person, take pictures of the slides, disseminate the work to people outside of that conference. And it can be really helpful to serve as an icebreaker. So when there were in-person conferences, you would be tweeting about the conference. You would see other people who were live tweeting it as well. And you would all like each other's posts and stuff like that and comment on each other's posts during the session, which it also adds another layer of interactivity, because you don't want to be whispering to your, colleague and being rude to the presenter. So you can do that online. But it really helps for, when the time comes for coffee breaks and things like that, you've already, essentially kind of met this person in a way. So you can say, oh, we've interacted a bunch online. Like, do you want to meet up during the coffee break? And it's a great sort of way to get to know people that way. So these are sort of the main sort of incentives that I see. So I figured hopefully maybe by this point I have somewhat convinced you to create a Twitter account. So if you want to, I can't see you, so I don't know how much you're paying attention or not, but you're welcome to set up the account right now. If you want, you can just go to twitter.com. It's really easy to set up with your existing accounts, emails, or phones. And this is just sort of the initial bio, what it looks like to set up your profile. This is definitely the very first thing you should do before you start following anyone, because if you want people to follow you back and you have a blank profile, most likely they're not going to do it because they have no idea what they're going to get from it at all. So there are some sort of essential things I think you should add in to your profile to make sure that you sort of connect with the right people and you start sort of building your network. So first and foremost, make sure like you have a professional looking handle and you have your name up there. You can put your official title or not. I choose to a lot of times because I feel like a lot of my interactions, I get a lot more respect, and it does sort of give some insight into my sort of level of expertise or insight that I'm coming from. Also, as a woman, I think that it does give a little bit more respect sometimes, you hope. So once you have sort of your title set and your professional-ish profile, mine is sort of a comment on another epidemiologist was sort of slandered after he made a technical critique of a large, very famous person in the field, and this letter to the editor response was incredibly unprofessional, and he called out his Twitter profile picture in particular because he said the man with the glasses holding the cat, sort of thing, because he had a cat in his picture. So I have my glasses and I'm next to a big shrimp, sort of in solidarity of him. But perhaps you could choose a more professional picture, but it's up to you. I don't take myself too seriously, so I'm very happy with that picture. And also your header profile, the banner on the top is completely optional, but it can add a sort of more insight into sort of who you are, where you're coming from. So you want to start off with the essentials. Definitely say what your job position is, where you are, whether it be the university or the city, and sort of what your main interests are. So people, when you're following them, have an idea of what sort of you're going to tweet about. And then you have a little bit of space to sort of be flexible with. Some people say, retweets are not endorsements, kind of things. I believe very strongly that my identity is not solely academic. So I'm a certified yoga teacher, and I have an embroidery side business. So those are in there because sometimes I will tweet about that. And also I have my former universities there listed because I think that also sort of says a little bit about where I'm coming from and who I am. You can also add in your website. So I put my professional website there, and Twitter is definitely one of the main referrers to that website. You can also put in your location, but it's very common to put your pronouns where the location thing is. So I have she, her there. And then you can put your birthday or not. But, I figure birthday wishes can't hurt, so why not? So once you have sort of your bio set up, the core functions of Twitter. So there's obviously, you're going to tweet something. Generally, the ones that have images, have GIFs, they are the ones that will sort of get more attention. They take up more space in the timeline. You can also do interactive things like polls, which you can set for, one day or a whole week. And you can also schedule your tweets ahead of time. So this is very good if, you don't want to be on Twitter every day, you have something coming up, Monday morning, set aside some time and you can schedule your tweet to go out on Friday morning. So you don't have to sort of worry about that kind of thing. So that's a very helpful thing to have. You can also sort of restrict who your audience is. You can also restrict your account to public or private. I would recommend to keep it public if at all possible, because if it is a professional account and you're using it to communicate your work, you kind of want it to be public in a way. I would say the only restrictions you should have would be generally if harassment occurs, which it does, but then you can usually block, mute people like that, and hopefully you won't have that issue. Another thing with tweeting is you can draft it and save it, and it goes into your sort of unsent tweets area, which is very helpful, especially if perhaps you're having a bad day and you want to sort of vent on Twitter, which Twitter can be sort of a negative place. So I would definitely recommend to use the drafts and use the unsent tweets option as much as you possibly can, especially when you're sort of getting into it in the beginning. So in terms of more interactive stuff, once the tweet is out there, there's a few different options for interacting with it. So there's the retweet, which is essentially just taking something from someone's profile and putting it on yours. No comment whatsoever. You're just sort of saying, okay, this is out there and you should be aware of it. That's it. It can be more valuable. They added it more recently to quote retweet it, so you can add an additional comment to the piece. And this is sort of the most valuable way of engaging with a post. Less valuable is liking. which is the little heart thing. There's not really much benefit to liking and retweeting. If you are retweeting, that's probably the best thing by far. But it's good to keep in mind that liking is public. A lot of politicians have sort of been caught out on liking inappropriate posts. And also, if you feel like your timeline is getting out of control, it's showing you, negative things or the wrong things, it's very good to look at what you've been liking, because that is telling essentially the algorithm, like, show me more of this. So be very careful with, I think, what you like, both that it is public, other people can see it, other people can be recommended, especially if you have, 4 of your followers like to post, that will show up in your timeline kind of thing. So be aware that it is public, and also be aware that it will change what you interact with. And then in terms of when you're writing things, it can be very helpful to increase your audience through things like hashtagging. So we have Postdoc Appreciation Week, or NPAW 2021. So you can see sort of all the different universities, societies that are interacting with this hashtag this week. And it's a good way to sort of connect with people. Also, you can tag someone or @ them. Be quite cautious, judicious with this one, because this is very sort of explicitly calling someone out, like, hey, bring this to your attention. You don't want to spam 10 people in one post, so just be cautious with mentioning people and adding them. So some additional functions that I think are often overlooked. Some have more value than the other. So there's the lists option, which is in your sort of sidebar thing. So this is a really good way to sort of segment your timeline, particularly, if I'm having a very COVID heavy week. I love my epidemiologist list, but perhaps I need a break from that, and I want to look at just the general news, or things about Ireland, or other options. So it's a good way to sort of go into sort of that silo and get what you want very, very directly. Also, there's bookmarks. So if you want to save tweets for later, instead of just bookmarking them on Chrome or something like that, it can be helpful to do that. And then there is another option for moments, which is hidden. So that can be, if you're more interested in blogging about events that happen on Twitter. So say that there was some big paper that was published and there were a bunch of problems with it. You can take sort of people's different comments on things and pull them all together and sort of create this narrative into this moment around sort of, some topic or some event that happened. So that can be very useful for sort of science communication type stuff. I personally haven't used it much. I haven't seen it used that much, but when it is used, it can be done so quite effectively. So some general do's and don'ts of interacting with Twitter. So first off, I would say treat every tweet as if a potential interviewer could bring it up in an interview. We have our phones on us all the time. You can tweet whenever you want, but please don't tweet under the influence. That means any sort of drugs, alcohol, but also if you're sad, if you're mad, really take time to stop and think, especially because you're coming at it from a professional perspective. So definitely draft your tweets, save them, sleep on them, and return to them. And there's no shame in, if you put something out there and then deleting it off your timeline later. It's better to sort of, clean it up and, recognize your mistakes than leave it on there. Also, it's very easy to sort of, I think a lot of people think that Twitter can be quite negative, which is true to some degree. So be very careful about how you interact with it and don't sort of fall into the Twitter hole. So both in terms of, general social media stuff of, protect the time that you have. Don't sort of be all consumed with it. Schedule your tweets ahead of time and sort of interact with it very thoughtfully and curate your timeline in a way, and then also segment it through the use of lists and things like that. Also, hopefully in the beginning, you'll have sort of an idea of what you want to get out of it, but it's good to, along the way, sort of reflect upon progress and goals. So this doesn't have to be like, oh, I didn't gain like, 1,000 followers this month. I'm really angry. So try to sort of set more realistic goals and, maybe that you networked with one person who was, outside of Ireland, or someone who was in your field, or things like that. So it can help you sort of, really focus on what you want to get out of it. You can also periodically review sort of how your account is doing through analytics, looking back through your likes and seeing, especially if your timeline has sort of gotten out of control, maybe, you were going through a rough time and were liking the wrong things, and then that sort of changed things a bit. So just, be careful about how you interact with it, and try to be very clear about what you want to get out of it. So, don't haphazardly engage in it, and also don't become discouraged, I think, if, you're not going viral every week or something like that.
Melissa, sorry, before you go ahead, I think Mairead, am I pronouncing correct? She has a question there for you. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no worries. Go for it. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. So the question was, what do you mean by segment? When you say curate your timeline thoughtfully and segment it, just by segmenting your timeline, what's that exactly? Yeah,
so I would say with the lists in particular, I don't really know of any other like platforms. Like you can't really do that with like Instagram, like kind of thing. But with the list, it's, so I follow 100 people, and 5 of those are epidemiologists. I'm going to take those 5 people, I'm going to put them on the epidemiologist list. So then when I want to interact with epidemiology content, I go to that list, and the timeline is different. The timeline shows me only those people who are on that list. And so I'm not shown, anything about Trump or anything about politics or anything about like, other things. I'm only shown the people that I put on this list. You can also follow other people's lists that they curate. So like my epidemiologist list, I don't know, like it's suggested for other people to follow. And so it has like 400 followers on it. So other people can go to my list and view all the people that I added to it. So it's just a sort of way to create I think of it as a sort of safety bubble in some ways, because, there are certain times I don't want to look at a certain thing. And, I'm very focused on, like my PhD one, I have a list for that of, I only wanted to see the tweets of people who were in my network. Yeah. So it was very helpful to be like, okay, I'm going to check in what those folks are doing. So it can be helpful in that regard.
And is it just people that you tag and put in on a list, or like do you include a hashtag or anything like that, for example, or is that a completely separate thing? It's just actual accounts, like Twitter handles?
Yeah, it's a completely separate thing. So it's not, you're not tweeting, retweeting, adding anyone. It's sort of like background function in a way. Maybe at the end I can like show you my Twitter account and sort of how you get into it. I think that could be good. Is that a plan?
Thanks, Melly.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions before I'm near the end, so. Let's see. Okay, can you see my slides again? Right.
We still see the do's and don'ts.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So these are the analytics thing that I said to sort of check in on. So this is a good way to sort of reflect on, this month, are you tweeting more or less than last month? Who are you sort of reaching? Did you, get any new followers, things like that. So it can really give you insight into sort of, what people are interacting with the most, perhaps what you should tweet more about. And also, the people who are mentioning you, because they sort of have the ability to expand your network as well. So getting started, some easy sort of ways to sort of dip your toes in. You can, of course, start off following, the university that you're at and the departments that you're connected to and the different funders. They can be very helpful for being aware of new funding calls, of new job opportunities, and you can start sort of, essentially having your bubble quite small and only focusing on sort of local researchers. But I will say, the university stuff and the funder stuff is very valuable from a professional perspective, but it's not always the most interesting things. So definitely try to branch out and connect with those who they have similar interest areas, but maybe they are a bit further afield geographically, or even maybe I follow some people in economics. I'm an epidemiologist. People like to say that we hate each other, but we love each other. So it's very good to sort of be aware of different conversations around the same topic. Also, it can be very good to sort of start off with retweeting people. So you don't want to make your account sort of be like a bot account and just, retweet. You do want to sort of try to add some comments on it, give your perspective on things, and then hopefully you'll sort of be a bit more comfortable with things, and then you can sort of start tweeting yourself. And then, like I mentioned, to try to curate your feed, so interact with it very carefully and create lists, which I will show at the end. So some examples of personal benefits that I've had from using Twitter. So like I said, at the beginning of my PhD program, they sort of said, you should make a Twitter account. You need to do this for science communication stuff. I had no idea what it was. I had a Twitter account for a long time, but I never ever used it. It actually got hacked. And so I had to clean it up initially and restart it. But since then, it's been very helpful for, so it's the top referrer to my professional website. So it's really great that, when they get to my professional website and they have my full CV, people have interacted with me and, offered me co-authorship on different commentaries and things like that. And they primarily found me through Twitter. Also, the note on conferences earlier. So I had a Twitter account at the time, but I maybe had a few hundred followers. I didn't have many at all. But I applied for a fellowship with the European Public Health Association annual meeting. And it was for to help sort of them with their communications to tell their attendees sort of what was going on, because there are so many parallel sessions, people can't attend everything, that they got maybe 5 to 10 early career researchers, and we sort of had control of the Twitter account, and we sort of were able to help them communicate about the conference. So I was assigned to the mental health track, and I went to all of those sessions. It really helped sort of be an icebreaker of, hi, this is who I am, this is why I'm here. And from this, then I was able to publish a report about sort of the state of public mental health in 2018 in Europe. So it was very helpful in sort of getting my foot in the door. It really opened a lot of great networking opportunities. And I really think that, having a Twitter account to begin with and showing that I had some sort of idea what I was doing really helped things, and it really only sort of improved from there. Also, it's really helped with sort of my day-to-day research stuff. So, I use R for statistical analysis sometimes, and it's been great for people suggesting different packages to me or better code. And I've actually, met up with people that I met initially on Twitter who helped me with our stuff. So it's been really helpful in terms of the research stuff, and also in terms of networking. It helps you find job postings a lot easier and network. So I direct message someone that I had followed for a while, that I had interacted with down at UCC, we had a coffee, and then talked about what the research scene was like in Ireland. He gave me some great advice for career stuff, and even I was suggested for some different grants and some different jobs. And this really all came from initially, I followed someone on Twitter, I talked to them, and then when the time came that I was actually in the same city as them, then I asked them for coffee. And I had already had sort of the introduction online. They already had a sort of idea of who I was. It was sort of better than a cold email to some degree. And lastly, kind of a weird one, but so last year in the New York Times, my embroidery was there. And so it went a little bit viral at the time because it was the beginning of the pandemic. And it referred a lot of people to my professional website, which was great. So a lot of people just went straight to the search engine and were like, who the heck is this girl? But Twitter was definitely very instrumental in getting people to my website. And my downloads of my CV went crazy afterwards. I actually got offered a consultant job from it. I started an embroidery side business from it. And definitely, I know that it's not all Twitter, but it was another way for people to get in contact with me, to sort of network with other people. And it really enabled me to expand sort of outside my typical, academic research realm. So I only have good things to say about the benefits that I've gotten from Twitter. So I'm interested in hearing sort of any comments or thoughts on things. And I will end it there. Hop back to you guys.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Melissa. That was fantastic. A great overview for what are really the benefits and how we can kind of start. I'm gonna open up obviously the questions for the floor, but first of all, I'd like to say that you are doing a great job for the postdoc Twitter account. You and Syringe are really stuck into it. You're really, it's great to see that someone actually knows what Twitter is about. Personally, and then I'm obviously opening up. Same as you said, I've started with retweeting because I wasn't really comfortable in writing yourself kind of thing. So I started with a normal retweet, and then maybe you do a bit of quote retweet. And now sometimes I'm not there yet, obviously at your level, but certainly it kind of makes you feel it makes you feel that you can do it kind of thing. So after this comment, I'm gonna open up the floor, questions for the floor. I think there is a comment from Ronaldo. Let me see. I don't know if Ronaldo wants to read it himself, but anyway, he said, first of all, I learned a lot. A question, I don't understand the bookmark.
Yeah, so I don't really use it that often. Let me sort of grab, okay, can you see Twitter?
Yeah.
Sorry, I hate the white screen, so let me make it black. Okay, so I do use it sometimes, but not much at all. But it's really helpful for particularly if a lot of people do threads of, here are 20 articles on common statistical mispractices kind of thing. Things that when a peer reviewer comes back to you, you can say, no, I shouldn't provide p-values in table 1. So it can be very helpful for those kind of things. And so I think, I don't have many bookmarks, but one of them was the first tutorial that I did was on it was a summary of one of the articles for my PhD. So it was a good reference to for me to go back. If I ever had to do a quick talk about it again, then I already had the structure there in a easy to communicate way, not a very academic way. So it can be good to bookmark your own things, and also bookmark I use it for reference tweets mainly, but yeah, it depends on, you can use it different ways.
Lovely, thank you, Melissa. Any other questions from the floor?
I can get to the list thing if that's good.
Go for it. And then I have a question myself, Melissa.
Yeah. I'll zoom in a bit. Okay, so the lists are on the side. So You can, let me see. I want to see if people can see it. I always forget where you can find these things. Because I know the Postdoc Society has a list as well. So we made one for RCSI accounts, essentially. So if you like, because we follow, you know, a lot of different individual researchers at RCSI, postdocs. We also follow other postdoc societies. But so we had a list that is only for sort of departments at RCSI, the official communications. So if you go to someone else's profile, there's this little dot, and you can see all the lists that they have created. So we have one for RCSI, and you know, there are, sorry, they're doing construction outside now. So this has 30, like over 30 members on it. They're all official departments. So we have some followers to this list. If you wanted to sort of an easy way to follow all the departments, like at RCSI, the official communications, you could just follow this list. You wouldn't have to individually follow every single, you know, 31 members of this list. So it's a good way to, you know, if you just follow this list, you can say, okay, I'm just going to look at what's going on at RCSI today. But you can also, sorry, go ahead.
No, just so basically, if you see the list and you click on that, then your timeline is only showing you those accounts, what they've posted like in that week or whatever it is. Okay.
Yeah. So I will only see, you know, yes, it's, you also get like their retweets and stuff. You don't get their original tweets. Well, you also get their original tweets, but you know, you get to see sort of a very protected bubble in a way. Yes, so you get to see how great we are.
I thought it was cool, really cool stuff. Very good.
So you can follow other people's lists. So that's a good way to sort of, if you don't want to have to go through the trouble of following a ton of people and you want to sort of have these sort of segmented timelines, it's a good way to do that. But you can also create your own. So, you know, all of these are my lists. I have quite a bit. You know, I followed someone else of like scientists who do arts and crafts because I'm interested in that kind of thing. You can also do private ones. People can also add you to lists, which is interesting sometimes. Like when someone puts that I'm a COVID expert, and I'm just like, nah, but thank you. But yeah, so you can pin them to the top so you have easy access to them. But you can also just go into them individually, and then once you do, again, like you're in your bubble. So I'm only seeing the tweets from these 46 people on this list. I'm not, and I follow nearly like 1,000 accounts. So it's, you know, I'm never really gonna see those 1,000 accounts in my timeline. So it's a very good way to interact with things.
Lovely, thanks, Melissa. There is a question there from Pinar. Can you see it? Will I read it for you?
Yeah. So for those who can't see it, it says, thanks, Melissa, it was fab. Could I ask your suggestion in terms of general hashtags when we tweet our published papers? So I would say that this really depends on the field that you're in. I think that the best way to do this is if you follow other people who are in your research field, you will sort of see, you know, general, the big community hashtags sort of things. So some hashtags are more popular than others. You know, like I'm a part of Epi Twitter, but it's a very large hashtag because it's pretty much all about epidemiology. So it really depends on the field that you're in. Yeah, I don't have any specific publication stuff to mention. The only thing I can think of is if there are certain accounts that are sort of, they're not bots, but they are sort of retweet machines. So like one is like academic chatter, which is more like if you have a question generally about academia, you know, some people like ask questions about like, you know, if you had a question about like, you know, what was your experience like with postdoc contracts, or, you know, moving to a new city, or what advice would you have like for your, you know, your PhD student in your lab or something like that, then they might retweet you, and then you sort of get a lot more, because I think they have like over 100,000 followers or something. But generally, like, I don't know of things publication specific for that. A lot of the journal websites themselves have Twitter accounts and Twitter icons on their website, so that is very helpful, both in terms of I'm a meta scientist, meta researcher, so a lot of my work was sort of on meta research on research. So when you actually interact with the article from the website, it tracks it a lot better. It's linked to the article DOI, and that sort of is better to interact with the article rather than sort of tweeting it yourself. And also, like, I know I've tweeted things from JAMA before and like given like a general short summary of it, and JAMA has actually retweeted my tweet, like rather than sort of make their own. So it can be very helpful in terms of both communicating your own work and other people's work to sort of interact with the journal's Twitter accounts and the journal's websites rather than sort of draft your own tweet. I hope that makes sense and helps a little bit.
Yeah, definitely, Melissa. I think there is someone, I think it's Mairead, she's saying that there might be a website, the program that you can look up hashtags related to your topic and how much it's used. And she mentioned it could be TweetDeck. Is that correct, Mairead?
Yeah, I think so. It was on a project I worked on a few years ago. The project manager at the time had a particular program where we spent time looking up what hashtags were related to the MOOC that we were developing. So I think it was TweetDeck, but I could be wrong. But I'll check with her and come back to the group. And what it was like computer, it was like a full. There was all these columns, like looking at all these hashtags and how much they were used, and like you can access it. You don't have to pay to access it. So I'll try to find out. I don't know if that rings a bell, Melissa. Have you seen anything like that?
Yeah, it does. There are quite a few like different. I don't really know what to call them. They're kind of like platforms-ish. Yeah, TweetDeck is one of them. A lot of times people use them definitely for professional accounts, like scheduling things ahead of time. If you're in charge of multiple accounts, it gives you a lot sort of more analytics and behind the scenes sort of things, and a lot more control than just general Twitter does. So yeah, there's TweetDeck, Hootsuite, Buffer. There's a few of them out there that can help with that. But yeah, and definitely similar to sort of Instagram's thing of like diversify your hashtags kind of thing, of like the biggest hashtag is not always the best because it might get lost in it. So sometimes the niche hashtags might be more beneficial. And also don't, like the same with adding someone, tagging someone, you don't want half your tweet to be sort of hashtags and tags. It just becomes a bit unpleasant to read and it doesn't say much in the end. So yeah, be judicious with your use of hashtags and make sure, to look up ones that are most relevant for you.
Lovely, thanks a million, Melissa. There is another question from Muren there saying that thanks for the great talk. I just wonder if you'd recommend starting a new professional Twitter account or readjusting your own personal account. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think it would depend on sort of what you were tweeting about previously. Like, I mean, I see some notifications on my Twitter account right now, so maybe some of you have followed me, and like if you go through my recent timeline, not all of it is going to be like professional. Like some of it is going to be like me complaining about like things. So it doesn't have to be like completely like I am a scientist, this is my science, and this is all me. So I think it really depends on, like I'm sure that I've tweeted about like, I'm from Detroit, like I've tweeted about the Red Wings hockey team before. I've tweeted about yoga before. Like it's not professional, but it's not inappropriate. So I think it really depends on, again, if you just go back to that question of if you were in a job interview, someone came with your tweet printed out in front of you and we're just like, why is this here? Why did you say this? Can you defend it? If you can defend it, if you have a good reason for it, if you still stand by it, then I say it's fine, keep it up there because, you are a human being. You don't have to be like, pristine and clean all the time. But yeah, and also if it has things like profanity, I would say generally, yeah, you can delete old tweets. You can clean up your account. So it depends on how much work you want to put into it. and how much, what you had on it previously. It could just be easier to just set up a new professional one.
Lovely. And so then Marin just said, yeah, but she just answered to you there. So very important retweeting competition. So thanks for answering. And I actually have a question myself, Melissa, if you don't mind. It's a very, very basic question. It's about hashtags. So you know this, the way you say, oh, you can write hashtags, blah, blah, blah. Can you follow hashtags? So you can follow accounts. So say Melissa, I can follow you, but you know the way you said academic chatter. So if you search for academic chatter, is that a page that then I can follow? Because that's one thing, I'm sorry, that's a very basic question. But
yeah, I feel like you might be able to. But
or is it just something that, because then how am I supposed to be able to see what people say about academic chatter? Because that comes in my timeline for some reason. I must be following, the algorithm must know that I'm researcher or whatever, but I don't know, is that a page or is it something that,
So academic chatter is both a hashtag and an account, actually. So like they have like almost 170,000 followers. So, if you get retweeted by them, usually you will gain some followers. Your tweet will have a lot of comments on it. There'll be quite a lot of interaction with it. But, not everybody who mentions that hashtag is going to be retweeted by the main account. So I want to say that you can't, but I don't. But it's really easy to just search sort of the hashtag.
Yeah. I think I'll do that because I wasn't sure.
Like click on the hashtag when it comes up, then you sort of get into for the search, and you can just sort of see everyone from there. And you can also, there's an advanced search option. So a lot of people don't know that you can search much more specifically certain time periods and things like that. Also, you can Twitter has an API that you can apply for if anyone's interested in academic researcher access. If you want to look at sort of public discussions around a certain topic, you can apply for that and get it for free, and you have access to all of the Twitter archives back to when Twitter was created. So,
lovely. Great, thanks for me, Melissa. Anybody has any other questions or comments, or your own experience on Twitter? If you want to share with us, how if you find it useful, if you haven't started yet, why any comments are very welcome. I'm just gonna say one. Mairead, yeah, you're on mute, Mairead.
Sorry, thanks. I did have one, but just waited because I'd asked a few in case anyone else came up. But it was around the topic of complaining on Twitter, actually. I noticed an increasing trend towards that. And I've been using it for a little while, but have always kept it really basic, but I'm kind of conscious that how basically I use it is preventing more interaction, that way. But then, I just observe a lot of colleagues really starting to use it to complain. And it seems to be like this kind of new network or culture or community on Twitter where that's acceptable, it's okay, it's there's humor behind it, there's connection behind it. But then when I see on Twitter what I see certain colleagues kind of really ranting about, it just takes me by surprise. It's like there's kind of two separate worlds nearly, the physical world, okay, not so much over the past year and a half, but then also the Twitterverse as such, and how people have their professional selves kind of work, but then how they also use Twitter to call out things or complain about things. And it's just, is there, from your experience, Vanessa, a culture of acceptance around that? I guess that it is becoming more acceptable and considered kind of humorous, and that there's a connection to it, to just call things out, let's say, on Twitter. Is it less kind of damaging than it may have been considered 5 or 10 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is there's a lot of there's a journal of infodemiology now. There's a journal of medical internet research. They have a lot of research on Twitter accounts. They do a lot of sentiment analyses. It's not a surprise that Twitter is not always the most positive of places. But up until before the pandemic, you'd always get those sort of complainers here and there. But I don't think that it was nearly as bad by any means. And especially any time that sort of any big political contentious thing pops up, your timeline will definitely change. It doesn't matter if like you like things like personally, like it's just other people that you know will be frustrated, they will interact with it and it will be shown to you. So there have been times in the past like year and a half where I have just stepped away from Twitter for, you know, a few days or a week just because it did get incredibly toxic. And I do think that, I mean, it's no secret that it's not been the easiest time for people to like cope with things, and I think that it's a very easy way for people to voice their frustrations, to have, you know, be heard, sort of things. But I can definitely say that some people that I've followed, you know, before the pandemic, their tweets have changed significantly in terms of they complain a lot more, they're a lot more critical of other scientists. So I do think that there has been a general shift sort of in acceptability to complain, I guess, because I was always told like, oh, like you're on Twitter, oh my God, like that's a horrible place. But I was always protected by my academic Twitter bubble. But that kind of burst with COVID, I think, to a certain degree, because, you know, all the epidemiologists like got really frustrated, all the healthcare professionals got really frustrated, and it was an easy way to sort of communicate to other people, this is my experience, this is my frustrations. So yeah, it has become, I think, a lot more of a politically contentious, negative place. So that's why I've said many times, like, be very careful, like curate your timeline, like take breaks, like, because you can, I think with most social media, you can get very sucked in, it can be very negative, but you can get a lot of good things out of it. You just need to like interact with it very carefully, I think.
Thanks, Melissa. That was a lovely comment. I think it's yeah, like
yes,
it's
unfollow and mute options are very good. Yeah, thanks for that, Anne.
Yeah. And I think it's important that, you know, you said like it's a good thing, but also it can be toxic. So just to be careful, kind of in the balance, I suppose. So it's good to know the both sides, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I've gotten like harassment on Twitter before, like marriage proposals. Like that's why I say, like, as a woman, like I put my title there. Like I've gotten some slanderous things before, and yes, like, you know, I block people, I mute people if I have to, like I unfollow them if I have to, if they're saying, if I don't want to see that sort of negativity, yeah, then it is what it is. I see Anne, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, thanks, Melissa. It's a great session. I think probably have a similar opinion to you. I generally have gained a lot more from Twitter, I think, than I've ever experienced in terms of negativity. And I think just picking up on the point there that was being made, I think you will at times come across some of this negative interaction, and just choosing to step away, be that unfollowing a person who literally brings you down with their tweets, or muting certain things as well. But one thing that I found really, really helpful for me, that really helped me curate the content that I wanted to see, was actually taking part in some Twitter tweet chats. And sometimes it can be maybe a little bit more applicable sometimes to some professional organizations, because I know sometimes some of them will do things maybe around journal clubs or around emerging CPD or issues there. So I know there's an occupational therapy one, OT Talk, that runs quite a bit. There used to be a great Irish Med Twitter, and that's how I found like a lot of not just healthcare professionals, but actually a lot of like patient and public representatives and people who are engaged around different themes. So have a little kind of like look at times. I don't know how often they occur now, but there might be one in your field that might help you to connect, help you to dip your toe by engaging. So it works by everyone talking around a shared hashtag for a set time, be it an hour or a day or whatever. And it can just be a nice way of feeling your way into the world in a very receptive community that are going to engage positively for the most part back with you. So that's just what I wanted to say.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, I think there used to be one for early career researchers and PhD students, but yeah, there are some sort of live chats that are great. Outside of, you can also do conferences and things like that. Like they have a lot of live tweeting, live chats, but yeah, it's good for journal clubs and community building.
And do you find them, sorry, because again, I'm the newbie here again, do you find them on, you just kind of type like tweet chats and then there's a different groups on that? Is that how it works? Sorry, that's probably a stupid question again.
They can well, they can be, I think, sometimes hard to find. Any ones I've found have sort of stumbled across. It depends on how they promote them, but you could search for like Twitter chats or live chats or tweet
Okay.
chats, in and around that. I know there's quite a few that do like multidisciplinary kind of work around like journal clubs as well. So just sometimes it's just worth maybe following some of maybe the key journals in your field to see if there's engagement around there. But yeah, they can be hard to find. But when you get there, you kind of usually find like-minded people. It's usually a nice place.
Lovely. Thanks, Anne. Thanks, Emil. We might have time for another quick question if someone has it, or comments. Okay, we're all good, I suppose. Well, then it's gonna just, it's gonna left me to just say thanks a million to Melissa for the fantastic presentation. I hope you all like kind of gain something from it. She's obviously a fantastic job like for the Postdoc Society, but also as for herself. I thought your example of like how you actually, you know, gain visibility and like even your embroidery work, like, you know, took up so well thanks to Twitter, and obviously your effort as well. So it's fantastic. So it was a great example, I suppose, and very inspiring, I think, to kind of just see what we can do really with Twitter rather than just, you know, retweeting and usual stuff kind of thing. So well done for that. Thanks, Emil. And thanks everybody to come out, like just join us today, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow at 11 again. We do a postdoc researcher forum where some of us will present a little bit what we did yesterday, but like a little bit more in a structured way where we present who we are, what do we do to kind of try to create a community, a sense of community. And after that, we will also discuss what you guys would like to see us as Postdoc Society to do in the next coming year. So we'd like a bit of feedback on that if you're around, obviously. And also we will call for new members for the Postdoc Society board. So hopefully we'll see you tomorrow. Did I miss anything, Melissa? Is that all? I think that's all we have to say, is it?
No, I think that's all good. Thank you for listening to me ramble on. Yeah, and if you ever have any questions, feel free to tweet me, email me, whatever.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Melissa. Thanks, Emil. Thanks, everybody. Great to see you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Now, how do I stop this? And meeting.